For 21 seasons, it was the most peaceful hour on television. No screaming judges. No ticking clocks. No one getting voted off. Just the rhythmic hum of a table saw, the quiet scrape of a hand plane, and a man in a simple plaid shirt who spoke to you like a patient uncle. On Saturday mornings and Tuesday nights, millions of people watched Norm Abram walk into a sunlit barn in Massachusetts, put on his safety glasses, and turn a pile of lumber into an heirloom. The new Yankee workshop wasn't just a show, it was a ritual. And here is the first thing you need to know about its ending in 2009, the show was not failing. It was not losing money. It was not losing viewers. In fact, the opposite was true. It was a cash-stable, beloved institution. So when Norm closed the door and turned off the lights for the last time, the silence confused everyone. The official reason was simple, it was time. But the real reason Norm Abram walked away, the truth hidden behind the wood dust and the safety goggles, is a story about the weight of authenticity, the hidden cost of quiet excellence, and why sometimes a man has to walk away from a dream to save himself. To understand the ending, you first have to understand the sanctuary. The new Yankee workshop wasn't shot on a sterile Hollywood soundstage. It was a real 936-square-foot workshop tucked behind a farmhouse in Waltham, Massachusetts, literally producer Russell Morrish's backyard. This wasn't a set, it was a church for woodworking. When the show premiered in 1989 on PBS, the television landscape was dominated by slick, fast-paced consumerism. But Morrish, the genius behind this old house, knew something the networks didn't: Americans were starving for competence. They were tired of being sold things, they wanted to know how to make things. Norm was the perfect high priest for this religion of craft. He didn't perform for the camera. He didn't dumb down the joinery. He showed you how to cut a dovetail joint, then let you watch his hands do it. No quick cuts. No illusion. He built approximately 235 projects over the show's lifetime, from a simple porch swing to a four-poster bed that looked like it belonged in a museum. Every cut was his. Every mistake, and he rarely made them, but when he did, was corrected in real time. That authenticity was the magic spell. But casting that spell for 2 decades required a sacrifice that the audience never saw. Here is the hidden tension that began to fray the rope. Throughout the entire run of the new Yankee workshop, Norm Abram held another full-time job. He was the master carpenter on this old house, which meant that while he was building a Chippendale mirror for his own show, he was also rewiring a Victorian or framing a roof for the other. For most of the 1990s and 2000s, Norm was the hardest working man in home improvement. The math is brutal. Filming a single episode of the new Yankee workshop took roughly 40 to 60 hours of preparation, cutting, and shooting. That didn't include design time or lumber sourcing. When you add the This Old House schedule, Norm was easily working 70-plus-hour weeks, standing on a concrete floor. The audience saw a relaxed craftsman. The reality was a marathon runner who never stopped running. He had one production assistant to help with cleanup and finishing, but the core act, the dangerous, precise, physical act of woodworking, was done by a single man in his 40s and then his 50s. There were no stunt doubles for a table saw. The show's greatest asset, Norm's real, unmediated skill, was also its greatest liability. Because real skill doesn't come from the brain alone. It comes from the back. The knees. The hands. By the early 2000s, the workshop began to feel different to the man inside it. Viewers never noticed, because Norm never complained. That wasn't his style. His style was to show up, do the work, and make it look easy. But the people closest to him saw the changes. After a day of lifting sheet goods and planing rough lumber, the stiffness took longer to fade. The silent menace of the new Yankee workshop wasn't the saw blades. It was the floor. Norm stood for 12 hours a day on bare concrete. Not rubber mats. Not ergonomic padding. Concrete. 21 years of that does not just tire you out, it breaks you down. He developed persistent plantar fasciitis, a tearing sensation in the heel that makes every step feel like a knife. His lower back, the engine of all woodworking, began to tighten in ways that heat and rest couldn't fix. His hands, which had to feel the grain of the wood to guide the tools, began to ache from the repetitive vibration of sanders and saws. This is the part of the story that gets sanitized. People want the ending to be about ratings or money. But the truth is more human and more sad. Norm Abram was in pain. Not dramatic, hospital bed pain. Just the slow, grinding, chronic erosion of a body that had given too much to a craft. He was approaching 60 years old. And he realized that to keep building for the camera, he was mortgaging his ability to build for himself. The decision didn't happen on a spreadsheet. It happened in quiet conversations after the camera stopped rolling. Russell Moorish has hinted over the years that the final conversations were not about the show's future, but about Norm's present. The producer had built the workshop in his own backyard. He knew the toll. He watched Norm walk to his truck at the end of a shoot slowly, favoring one leg, and he knew the math didn't add up anymore. The public announcement came on October 16, 2009. WGBH Boston released a statement that was so understated it was almost invisible. Norm said, "We've had a great run, built challenging projects, met wonderful woodworkers and received loyal support from millions of viewers. That was it. No farewell tour. No tearful finale. Just a door closing." But the rumor mill exploded immediately because the human mind struggles to accept simplicity. People speculated about a feud with PBS. They claimed the show was too expensive. They said Norm had lost his passion. All of it was wrong. Norm hadn't lost his passion for woodworking. He was trying to save it. He was trying to save his own body so that he could still lift a chisel at 70. Here is the truth that the reference script hints at but which deserves full light. Norm Abram quit the show to finish his own home. This is not a metaphor. He built a timber-framed colonial house in Carlisle, Massachusetts, with his own hands. But for 21 years, his own house was full of unfinished corners, half-completed built-ins, and projects he had deferred because he was too busy building projects for the rest of the world. His own bedroom didn't have the custom closet he wanted. His own study lacked the bookcases he had designed. Think about the irony. The man who taught America how to build everything had no time to finish his own sanctuary. The real reason the new Yankee workshop ended is heartbreakingly simple. Norm wanted to go home. He wanted to walk out to his own workshop, not the TV workshop, and build a simple drawer for his own kitchen without a lighting director asking for another take. He wanted to plane a board just to feel the shavings curl, not to hit a commercial break. The show was a perfect machine. But perfect machines consume their operators. Norm realized that if he kept feeding himself to the machine, there would be nothing left for his wife, his family, or his own pine trees. So he broke the machine. Gently. Quietly. With respect. The aftermath proves that Norm made the right call. He didn't vanish. He continued on this old house in a reduced, advisory role until 2022, work that was collaborative rather than solitary. He finally finished the trim in his colonial. He visited the old Yankee workshop, which still stands, like a preserved shrine, just to tinker, not to perform. And then, in a twist that feels almost like a fairy tale, a new generation discovered him. In 2023, Russell Moorish put every episode of the new Yankee workshop on YouTube for free. Within months, a flood of young people, millennials, and Gen Z who had never owned a cable subscription, found Norm. The comments sections are filled with 25-year-olds saying, "Why is this the most calming thing on the internet?" and "I just built my first cutting board because of this man." The show didn't end because it was obsolete. It ended because its creator had the wisdom to stop before the craft became a curse. Norm Abram walked away so that woodworking would always remain a joy, not a job. He traded fame for cartilage. He traded ratings for rest. And in doing so, he didn't destroy his legacy. He preserved it. Most television hosts try to stay until the audience begs them to leave. Norm left while the audience was still begging him to stay. That is not a failure. That is the rarest kind of victory. That is the real reason the new Yankee workshop ended. Because the best craftsmen know that the most important project you will ever work on is your own life. And Norm finally needed to cut that joint by himself.